What do you believe right now that's making you feel this way? And when you analyse it, you realise how irrational you can be at times.
Every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
It's not sales per se, but the outcome of it is, because people get to know you, they get to see you.
But, you know, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development programme I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated. Yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times, and only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through ScaleUp Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews, and also through working with hundreds of owner managers over the last 10 years or so, into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer, or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk. This is such a great discussion, all sorts of aspects, but today I speak with Nigel G Honey, who is the lead trainer and the founder of something called Ability Academy, and that's all about post-production editing training, and he's spent 25 years in the industry, and he's working with STV, BBC, RDF, Channel 4, Channel 5, Sky. He's worked on all of the soaps, so it's fantastic. But he's set up a social enterprise to help people with invisible disabilities to get into the world of film editing, but not just to be included, but also then to be paid equally. So a really strong, purpose-driven business. And we'll hear some great advice. He's full of really great stuff to learn. But one of the things was around setting up the social enterprise in the first place. And Nigel shares one of the big mistakes that he made at the beginning and that he would have done differently. So lots of really good things, whether you're interested in the film industry or not. This is a fantastic episode to listen to. So I suggest we go across and listen to the full story. Welcome to another episode of ScaleUp Radio. I'm here with Nigel Honey today, who is the lead trainer and CEO of the Ability Academy. So Nigel, great to have you with us.
You too. Thank you very much.
Excellent. So the Ability Academy, what's that all about?
Well, I was a film editor for approximately 25 years, but when I started in the industry, I struggled because I've got an invisible disability. And when I mentioned this to people, a lot of people was looking at the fact that the disability part, and what I was trying to do is show that people with disability have very good ability in terms of creative work. And so what I did is basically 3 years ago, I had this idea that people with disability shouldn't not get the opportunities to work in TV and film post-production. Okay. And back then, it was still quite a new thing in terms of diversity, in terms of inclusion. And I went around a lot of broadcasters, and a lot of them were very kind of supportive, but they just couldn't really help me at the time. But roll on 3 years later, and now we're actually delivering training from the majority of them. So we deliver training for the BBC, ITV, Netflix, and we're in talks at the moment with Channel 4. So actually diversity inclusion is a major topic in the industry. But 3, 4, 5 years ago, I already knew this because I experienced it myself, in the fact that a lot of the times people would look at disability and think that you couldn't do things, when actually just with a few changes, a lot of people with disability, both visible and invisible, can work quite well in the creative industries.
And what are we talking about with invisible disability? What sort of thing?
Things like mental health, things like dyslexia, autism, where sometimes maybe schools have kind of said, "Oh, well, you're not quite cut out to work in this industry," whereas I can actually see the potential in people, because myself being told that I couldn't do something, I went off and did it. Basically, at school, they just didn't really understand what I wanted to do, because when I said I wanted to work in TV and film, they actually thought I wanted to repair TV. So that was about as good as a career service was back in the 80s and 90s, really, sort of thing. But thank God, what's starting to happen now is people like Screen Skills, who are the main training body in the UK for film and TV, are starting to take people into schools and say, look, there's this big creative industries and it's a growing industry and there's opportunities there. And just because you have a disability shouldn't stop you from working in this industry, which is great, because actually the way I got better, because I used to suffer badly from depression, was by making films. I actually found that was quite a good creative outlet for me.
Excellent. And okay, so what sort of stage is the Ability Academy at now? You mentioned, 3 years down the line, you've got some really big clients, or what sort of stage?
Well, we're actually very lucky now, because we've actually partnered with a company called Avid, which are basically the leading software company for TV and film post-production. Like, I think 80 to 90% of all feature films in Hollywood are actually made with this software. Right. So what we're doing, we're providing the skills which the actual industry wants. So we're actually providing them with software skills which the industry wants. Unfortunately, what happens with a lot of colleges and universities is they teach them software, but it's not actually the software that the industry uses. So they do a 3 or 4 year degree, and they have to start as a runner because they haven't got the right skills which the industry wants. Whereas what we're trying to do is provide them with the correct skills so that when they enter the industry, they can have a step up the ladder, basically. And the other thing that we're passionate about is to say that the people that we're actually teaching get opportunities, not only just training with us. We're trying to partner with a lot of companies to give them actual employment and paid employment, because what annoys me is a lot of the times, especially with younger people, they say, oh, well, they can get work experience, but we're not going to pay them any money. And I think that's terrible, because a lot of the times these companies have budgets, but they just don't want to spend it, basically. So that's why I'm passionate about getting people into the industry, but also paying for their services.
Fantastic. So how do you measure success? What counts as success for you?
Well, success for us is actually getting people either into further education or by getting them into paid employment. We're actually working with a company that actually did my website, and he's actually looking for people with disability to work as editors. So he's actually paying them a very good rate in terms of what they're getting paid for, and is also giving them skills which they can then move on to do other jobs, sort of thing. So for me, it's two things. It's making sure that people with disability are becoming included in the film and TV industry, and two, that they're being paid as good a salary as anyone else. So that just because they have a disability, they shouldn't be paid less money. So that's another thing I'm quite passionate about. Brilliant.
So how many people are you putting through your training?
Well, it's small numbers at the moment, but that's what I like to do, because I don't want to give this false hope as that we can train everyone, which we can't. But what we do is make our classes small. So unlike some places in the States, which take on like 20, 30, 40 students, we probably just take about 6 to 10 students on one of our courses, because we want to give them that one-to-one experience and give them the time to ask us questions, because there's nothing worse than being in a classroom or being on a Zoom session and you feel that you want to ask a question, but you don't have the confidence to do that. So what we try and do is keep our classes small, but the skills that we're giving them not only are the technical skills, but some of the sort of soft skills like confidence building, being able to communicate with others, that kind of thing, which sometimes a lot of young people really kind of struggle with.
And how do you make your money? How does a business model work?
Well, what we do, we've got two streams. So we work directly with students. So we do both accredited training with students, but we also do training with the broadcasters. So we're working with partners such as Screen Skills, such as the BBC, Netflix, and we're working to give them the right skills so they can then move on in the industry. We're now delivering a new course for junior editors, and it's kind of unique in the UK because for a long time, companies, post-production companies and broadcasts have been crying out for junior editors, but no one's been supplying them with the right skills and the right people. So we've basically designed a course with Screen Skills, and we're now doing that. We've also designed the first ever edit producers course, because what's happening a lot now, there's a lot more remote working. So, for example, my last job when I was editing, I was in Scotland, the director and producer were in London, and the edit suite that I was actually controlling was in Brighton. So the whole industry's completely changed. Whereas before, that was not possible. You had to be in an edit suite, either in Soho or in a city. And a lot of these places, because they was designed in the 70s and 80s, they're not very accessible. So what's amazing now is a lot of my students could be anywhere in the UK. And as long as they've got an internet connection and they've got the right software, they can be editing and they can be working, which is kind of revolutionized the whole industry.
Yeah, fantastic. And is it just for people with a disability of some sort?
No, we work with everyone. So we're very an inclusive company. So we work with people that want to come into the industry at a low level. We also work with edit assistants. We work with junior editors. We've designed a course to work with edit producers, because what was happening is these edit producers were given a laptop, given the software, but what they forgot to do is actually train these people. So what they was doing is actually giving them all this equipment, but then they didn't really know how to use it. So what we did between us, between me, Joe Wolf, who's an edit producer, and Screen Skills, we designed a course which actually gives them the right skills so that they can work remotely with editors. And so what can happen, they can do what is known as a sync pull. So they can pull all the best bits of the interview out, then give it to an editor, and they can fine cut it. So it actually saves a lot of time in terms of production.
Great. And do you have any, is it a case if you take somebody on a training course and there's a start and an end date to it, or is there any ongoing support that you're able to give them? How does that work?
What we do is we run both certified courses and we run bespoke courses, and then we also run continuous mentoring. So what I will do is I will work with either a couple of 2, 3, 4 people each year, and I will look at their CV. I will give them work advice. I will give them contacts. And it's up to them to do the work, but I just put them in touch with the right people, because at the end of the day, this industry is so competitive. So you kind of have to push yourself in a way, but at the same time, the hardest bit is just getting that foot in the door. So once you actually establish your connections with people, often it's a good thing, because like myself, once I got in with a company, then I kept being asked back and back again, sort of thing. So I think that's the hardest bit, is just getting them first connections.
Brilliant. So it's a competitive industry from the people that you're training. Sounds like you've created some unique training courses yourself.
It's quite funny, because I actually sent an email to the new Director General of the BBC, and he said to me, "Oh, Nigel, we know what you're about with your academy." So it was great that 3 years ago I was literally knocking on doors trying to get work from all these big companies, and now they're actually coming to us. Whereas BBC, Netflix, Grierson Trust, people like Mama Youth, who work with a diverse range of young people, are actually coming to us to do editing training. So we're actually really glad that we've continued to go, because 3 years ago I was literally about to just chuck it all in, because we were just getting hardly any help from anyone in terms of business support.
Well, let's get to that. Let's get to that in a second. And so who's the we? Who else is in the business?
Well, at the moment, it's just me, a guy called Erden, who I'm training up to be another trainer. And I've also got another board member who works at the University of Salford in a company called The Pipeline, and they are designed to create courses for the industry. So we're working a lot with partnerships, and that's basically the way we're growing our courses. Yeah. We've done quite a lot for Skills to Film, and they have got us in contact with IMG, which do a lot of sports broadcasting. And we're delivering a lot of Adobe Premiere courses for them, and we're doing well because they keep asking us to come back. So we must be doing something well. So
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So yeah, so take us back then. You were saying that 3 years ago when you were starting, there wasn't the support out there. So yeah, tell us about that. What got you into it?
Well, I knew from the start that I wanted this to be a social enterprise. So the problem I found that with a lot of business support, they didn't really understand what a social enterprise was. And a lot of them were saying, oh, it's a non-for-profit. And I said, no, it's not a non-for-profit. I said, what happens is I take my salary and then any other expenses, and then anything else we reinvest into the company to develop new courses and develop new structures. And I just found that it was really hard, especially certain business supports were just didn't really understand the business structure at all. Yeah. And even when I started up, I did it completely wrong because I set it up as a company by shares, and then straight away I couldn't get any funding. They said, because you set it up wrong. So I actually had to close my company down, open up another company, which is basically the same name, and then set it up by a company by guarantee, because I didn't really know this business structure, and it was something I was learning as I was going along. But the great thing is there was two companies that were great, which were called First Sport and Unlimited, who actually basically have worked with social enterprises before, so they understood what I was doing. And we worked with Scope in terms of developing courses to make sure that they was inclusive, which is why we was kind of got some funding and was successful.
And why did you decide to go down the social enterprise route in the first place?
I think it was because I had the reason I set up the company is because I knew the struggle I had when I started, because I myself have got an invisible disability, and I was basically told that I wouldn't work in the film and TV industry and I'd never be a film editor. And I'm the kind of person, if you tell me I can't do something, I'll go off and do it. And I went off and I did films for Aberdeen, BAFTA, Cannes, Raindance, Berlin, Bordeaux, pretty much all over the world. And I was passionate about getting more people with both visible and invisible disability into post-production. And that's basically why I set up the Academy, because I wanted to make sure that I could provide courses, but that people with disability were getting an even rung, that they was getting paid the same money as people without disability, because a lot of the times what was happening is people with disability were getting paid much less than their counterparts, and I just felt that was unfair, and this is why I set it up. And now I make sure that when people take my students, that they're paying them correct rates and good rates as well. So yeah,
brilliant. So you had some poor advice at the beginning. People didn't really understand it, but then was it First Port and Unlimited?
First Port and Unlimited. Yeah.
So just for those listening that may not quite understand the reasons why, what was the reason why setting it up as by shares were limited by shares as opposed to by guarantee was a stumbling block?
Well, the reason was because if you're a shareholder, you could take money out of the company, and you would, unless you've got people on the board, you would be no one to say why you take that money out. I had to basically make sure that I had a board, so that any kind of decisions and any kind of times that I want to invest in certain things, that I have to pass it through them, because otherwise I could say, right, I'm off for my cruise around the world and take money out of the company, and there'd be no one to say that. So I have to make sure that the board are happy with my decisions before I make any decisions myself. But I can make some drastic decisions, and it's good to have a second and third person to take them through as well, which is very, very, very helpful, I think. So yeah.
Excellent. So yes, and of course, if you're getting funding from public bodies or even possibly from commercial bodies, then they want to have that confidence that yes, you're not going to suddenly pay yourself a big dividend or something like that. So how did you go about setting up your board?
Well, that was one of the hardest bits, actually, because I knew the kind of people that I wanted on the board, but the problem was it was trying to find people that would give me the time and would give me the skills. So what I basically spoke to my business manager about is they said, Nigel, you're really good with the training and doing the training. You should find people with skills that can help you in terms of marketing, in terms of the website, to bring them kind of people on board. So I just basically went out and was just talking to lots and lots of people, and some people were appropriate. There was other people that were not appropriate, and I wanted to make sure they had the same kind of mindset that I had, that I wasn't really doing it because I wanted to make loads of profit. I was doing it because I wanted to help people, and that was the reason I set up the academy. Yeah, obviously I've still got to make a living, but the reason I set it up is I knew the struggle for me when I was younger to get into this industry, and I just wanted to try and help other young people, and not just young people, people of any age, to give them the skills to work in this industry.
Yeah, fantastic. So what sort of, because presumably there wasn't a lot of money around to pay your board, so how did you manage to attract the right people then?
Well, I basically said, once I get the funding, I'll pay you, basically. So it was a matter of kind of hoping that I get the funding. So yeah, but touch wood, I did get the funding, and now they're on board and they're quite happy. And the good thing is, one of the board members, so I'm actually training him to be a trainer himself. So hopefully what's going to happen, I won't have to do all of the training in the future. Some of the training can be done by himself, and then he can grow his confidence to become a trainer as well, which I think is a really good thing.
Yeah. So in this world, how do you go about things like setting pricing and how do you do that? What are you comparing yourselves with?
Well, I'm looking at other people that do similar, but the thing is, there's only one or two companies in the whole UK that do things similar. So I'm just judging it by what other people are charging in terms of courses, not just in the UK, but in the States as well, because obviously these courses can be delivered online now. So I have two structures. I basically have a structure when I'm teaching in the classroom, and I have a structure when I'm doing it online. And so I charge a little bit more when I'm in the classroom because it's more resources, and obviously I need to get to the location. Whereas when I'm doing it online, it's not so much. It's just making sure that all the connections are right and the students have the software and the computers work, sort of thing. So it's been a bit of a struggle, because obviously you don't really want to go in too high because you won't get any work, but at the same time you can't go in too low because people just won't see you as well.
That's credible.
Yeah, exactly. They don't think that you can do the job, basically. But what the great thing is, and this is one of the things people love about my training, is that I've been a film editor for 25 years and I still now and again edit, and I teach, whereas you sometimes go to colleges and unis and you get people that have done it but aren't really up to date with their knowledge, sort of thing. So what I have to get accredited each year to make sure that I can teach the software. And also I have to make sure that I keep all my knowledge up to date. So that's why for example, I'm going out to Netflix in a few weeks' time to do some training myself to make sure that I'm up to date with all their technology, because I can't teach on behalf of them if I don't know what they're doing. So that's why it works so well. And one of the guys, they was going to do it without me, and they said, no, we want Nigel there because we want to make sure that he's up to date. And that's really nice. And the great other thing was, one of my students said, Nigel, I learned more in a day with you than in a 4-year degree about film and TV editing, which kind of just shows you what I'm trying to do. So yeah.
Yeah, great. So what sort of things have you learnt along the? I'll tell you what. Just on that, in terms of, because you mentioned that you do some bespoke courses as well. So how does that work? Is there a consultancy fee then?
Yeah. So what happens with that is I do working on behalf of Screen Skills, which are like the national body for the film and TV industry in terms of training, and they then get me contracts with. I've just literally done some training with Coronation Street, the guys at Coronation Street, and they really like what I did. So they've asked me to go down to Emmerdale and do some training for Emmerdale with some of the junior editors and some of the technicians down there. So it's great now that I've got accredited and that people recognise me, that they actually come to me, whereas before I was literally just trying to bang on doors and saying, this is what I do. But until you get these kind of big companies, a lot of companies don't really take you seriously, and it is really hard to get that. But I'm the kind of person, I don't give up, where I just keep going, because there was so many times when I just thought, oh, this is too much, because it was literally just me on my own, and I was just like, oh, there's so many things to do. But you think, well, I've got this far so far, so maybe just give it a little more, like give it a few more months, because it was depressing when I first started, because I was literally like, there was not a lot of money, and I was just doing editing work just to keep me going, sort of thing. But I'm glad I did it now, because it's really paid off, and people were actually, I've been nominated for awards and all sorts of things now. So it's just,
well, that's how we've got in touch, wasn't it?
Yeah,
the Great British Entrepreneur Awards.
Yeah. So we've been nominated several years for different awards, and we're now recognised by the industry as one of the leading trainers in the UK, which is great, sort of thing. So yeah.
So take us through then that. So you break off. You start off on your own, and you got that period where you're having to do some editing work just to pay the bills, keep the wolves away from the door. So what was the lucky break? And how did you get that first?
I think it was just because I met certain people. Like I met a guy called Jeremy, who's a quite established director of photography, and he knew people at the BBC, and he was actually designing courses for them for camera work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was cheeky, and I just suggested, well, you're doing camera courses, why don't you do camera editing courses? And he said, oh, that's a good idea. And we was just about to do some stuff in Glasgow, and then COVID hit. So that all kind of. But the great thing is, he could deliver his camera training before COVID, and I did all the online training during COVID. So it actually worked out quite well. And he's basically, we've done so much training together, and we've done like with the stuff with IMG, and now he trusts me to deliver training on behalf of his company. So a lot of the times it's not always just my Ability Academy. I'm doing it in partnership or doing it on behalf of other companies, which is great, because they know I will do what they ask me to do, sort of thing. So yeah,
great. So what were some of the other milestones, if you like, obviously? So it sounds like lockdown obviously impacted you, but you were able to do
well. It was funny, because I don't know if I should say this, but we actually got booked by the National Film School, and COVID hit, and they basically said, oh, we can't do it now because you're not doing classroom training, we won't do it. And I said, well, that's your decision. But I said, I'm going to continue delivering the training online, which I did. And through that, we actually grew and grew and grew. And we was delivering courses to China, to Europe, to the States, to India. So actually being online was actually growing our company, because a lot of people just said, oh, well, if you can't do it on in a classroom, you can't do it at all. And funny enough was, I said to Avid a few years ago, I said, why don't you do these courses online? And they're like, no, we have to do it in a classroom. And COVID hit, and they were forced basically to do it online. And I was one of the first ones to basically move all my training to it. And it worked out for us. So actually, sometimes these kind of things that you think, oh, that's a really bad thing, actually you can reverse, and turns into a really good thing. So that's what we did. We kind of pivoted our training model, and we just now do blended. So we can either do classroom or online, and it works for us quite well.
And what do you think? What do you think it was that gave you the inspiration and the resilience to keep going through lockdown then and pivot rather than do what you just said lots of other people do, but say, oh well, we can't do it then?
I'm one of these people that I don't give up that easily, so I will try it. Even if it doesn't work, I'll just give it a go, sort of thing. I'm the kind of person, I'll give it a go, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if it does, hopefully it'll be successful. And 9 times out of 10, most things I've done in my life, it's kind of worked out the way I thought it would. But it's difficult because, like, I just thought, well, I can't just sit around and not do any training. I have to do training. And I just invested in like Zoom technology and everything else that was happening. And it worked really, really well for us. And we was just, people were approaching and coming to us because they knew we could do it, sort of thing. Whereas the National Film School and some of the university just closed down. And it's like, well, that's not any good for us because we need to keep going. But fortunately, some of them, they had the finances there from the government, which they could do to keep going without the finances. But we had to, basically, otherwise we would have gone under. Yeah. So yeah.
No, excellent. And so, what are some of the things that you think you've learnt along the way over the last 3 years, maybe? I
know this sounds really tacky, but I always say trust your gut, because a lot of the times I have gut feelings about things, and if they're usually quite right. Like there was certain things that happened, and I was just thinking that's not quite right for me, and it ended up it wouldn't have been right for me. So I'm glad I made that decision. But a lot of the times I've just got, I don't know, some kind of instinct about certain things to do and not to do. So and I think maybe take chances as well. I think if you don't take risks and chances, then you're never going to know whether it did work, because it was quite a risky decision moving all my training online, because I had to invest a fair bit of money to move it over there. But I knew that I needed to do that, because otherwise I couldn't just be sitting around doing nothing, sort of thing. So, and actually the industry's kind of followed, because they've realized now that we can do it remotely. We don't have to be in a city. We don't have to be in a post house to edit anymore. Obviously, some things like color grading and audio, you still need a lot of equipment and you still need big studios. But for things like offline editing, which is like film editing, you can do it remotely and you can be anywhere as long as you've got an internet connection. So it's kind of weird how the industry's changed. And the way I'm teaching is looking at that and showing that these are the ways that we can edit now. So, yeah. Yeah,
and I think you've just given a really good example of if you know why you're doing something and you really, and that's what you're trying to achieve. So, you're trying to support people, not just with disabilities, but you really want to improve that training, and the opportunities for them. If that's strong enough a driver for you, and then you can't actually meet face to face, you work a way around it and you find another way to do it. If it's not a very strong driver, which it may not have been for some of the competitors you were talking about, they go, well, we can't do it then.
So I think that was the difference, is they just basically had a mindset where, we can't do classroom teaching, so that's it. Whereas I had the mindset of like, well, let's just move it online. I know it's going to be more difficult, because in terms of when I'm teaching, I can only share one student screen at a time, but you can get around it. And that's why I don't have big classes. I just stick to about 6 students, sort of thing. And they like it because it's not big classes as well. It was funny because there was a guy in America doing similar to what I was doing. But what he was doing it completely wrong, because he was doing like 8-hour sessions non-stop. Wow. And he had about 30 students at the beginning of his class. Guess how many he had at the end?
3?
2. He had 2. So it shows you can do online, but you've got to put the brakes in, and you've got to have time to let the students actually practice. What I do is I deliver a bit of training, get them to practice it and then deliver a bit more. So I do it in chunks sort of thing.
Oh.
Whereas what he was doing was completely wrong and just trying to deliver the whole course in an 8-hour session. And he wasn't even giving them tea breaks or toilet breaks. And it's just like, you're not a computer. You can't train like that sort of thing. So,
So you introduce.
So I found out the way not to do it.
So you break it into chunks. You so you have your particular topic or exercise that you're doing. Send them away to do that exercise, and then you come back and you either do you share what you've done, and then
and then what I do is I it's up to them whether they want to do it, but I share their edits and then I give them feedback on where I think they could improve, sort of thing. And it seems to work really, really well. And like the feedback I've been getting has been really good. And even like the people from the broadcasters have come back and said, "Oh, you're doing a good job of it." So
brilliant. So I can tell from the way you're speaking how passionate you are about it. So what do you love the most about what you do?
Well, the thing is, there's some students which I've taught, and at the beginning of the class, they're literally looking at the floor, and you can tell that they're really struggling, sort of thing. But by the end of the class, they're just so engaged because they're doing something they really want to do. And this is why it frustrates me a bit when like the government are saying, "Oh, well, maths is the way to go." Well, I wasn't good at maths and I wasn't very good academically, but what I was very good at was music and art. And I was basically told I'd get nowhere in life with that, but I did, sort of thing. So that's why I think sometimes you shouldn't put too much pressure on certain subjects, because people will develop their own skills. And actually people with like autism are very, very creative in terms of music, in terms of editing, all these kind of things. So what I do differently is I look at what they can do rather than what they can't do. So a lot of people, they look at the disability and they look at the dis bit, whereas this is why I called it the Ability Academy. I take off the dis bit because I look at what people can do and how we can promote that and how we can nurture that sort of thing, because that can not only help you in your work role, but it can help you in life in general.
I love that. So you've just answered my next question, which is what frustrates you most. And I think it sounds like it'd be people telling you you can't do stuff.
Yeah. But the trouble is that when I was younger, I think it was this kind of thing that if you didn't, I don't know, if you wasn't academic, it was like you was pushed to the side and you was kind of the thick kids kind of thing. But I knew I wanted to do something creative in TV and film, but they just didn't really have the teachers, or they didn't have the career advisors to know about that. Because the thing was, I was the only one in my class and in my year that wanted to work in that industry, sort of thing. So that was I guess that was the hard bit, is that they didn't really know where to push me. So
and it's difficult, because ideally, the idealist in me says, well, schooling should be about finding for each individual what it is that they can be good at, unlocking it and helping them to do that, rather than saying, right, well, everybody's got to do, got to get to this standard in maths and English and whatever else we should be doing there. But of course, as you say, it's the resort. It's much harder to do the former. It's much easier to.
What's amazing now is I went down to Manchester to teach in a primary school, and I was teaching video editing for primary school. I was like, brilliant. Oh, I just wished I had that when I was a kid. But it was back in the days of BBC Micros, so there wasn't quite that advanced then. So it always makes me laugh, because I said when I started, it was actually physical film I was cutting, and actually big reel-to-reel tapes that I was working on. So yeah,
you're not that old for BBC Micros in computers, are you? That's what I remember. That's what I remember was we had one of those for the whole school, basically.
Yeah.
Club.
We still had typewriters as well.
Yeah, brilliant. No, that's fantastic. So what does the next 5 years hold for you?
Well, I just hope that we can help more people. Basically, we're growing as I speak. Basically, so now we're going to be employing another trainer, and we're trying to work with other partners. So we're in talks at the moment with Channel 4 because they're very passionate about diversity and inclusion. So hopefully we might be able to work with them because they've got a new part of their company called 4 Skills, and they're working with training. And the interesting thing is, about 5 years ago, no one was interested about training. And guess what's happened? ITV have just launched their own ITV Academy, which is to do with training. So it's funny how that now they've realized actually training is an important part, because what they've realized now with the amount of content that's being made with Netflix and with Amazon Prime, if we don't start skilling up and getting more people trained, the older generation are going to retire and there's going to be no one replacing them. So they've got to have these skills to basically screw up the amount of content. Like, as I say, I'm based in Scotland, and it used to be you had to go to London to work in the industry. Now there's so much work being done in Manchester, in Scotland, in Wales, in Cardiff, that you don't really need to have to go to London to work in the film and TV industry anymore. Whereas before, that was the only place there was work, kind of thing. So yeah. Good. It's all changing. It's actually probably a good time to be in the industry because it is so rapidly changing at the moment. So
yeah, rapid change, as you say, more and more content. So there's not just the fact that you've got the older generation retiring, maybe, but actually you've got more work that needs to be done than there was. Because,
the other thing is that now, even if you've got a business, what do you need? You need a video, because people are more likely to watch a promo video than read a load of text. So actually, there's companies out there that all they do is content for the web now, sort of thing. So it just shows you how it's kind of changed. So. Yeah.
So your market, your potential market is really quite significant, because it can extend to agencies as well, can't it? That are marketing agencies that are providing content and everything. Yeah, no, incredible. So, what kind of business at the end are you trying to create? What's the?
Well, I basically want to make sure that if you do want to work in the industry and you do have a visible and invisible or visible disability, that we should be able to help train you, because at the moment we're just doing post-production, but there's no reason to say as we grow we might be able to move into more production skills and pre-production skills. But at the moment I don't want to grow too rapidly and then just completely fail. I want to make sure that I grow at a nice even kill kind of thing, because there's too many companies that try and grow too big and then it doesn't happen. So I know that I'm good in terms of post-production, but obviously as we grow, we might be doing other courses as well, because we've actually been looking at possibly doing sound courses. We're looking at possibly doing animation courses, because these are also key skills that the industries is looking for, and that a lot of people are not able to do.
So what do you think is going to be one of your biggest challenges then in the next few years as you grow?
Well, the major one is AI, but I personally don't think that editing is ever going to be an AI skill. And I've actually seen some artificial intelligence editing, and it's absolutely terrible. It's like the audio's all over the shop, the music's all over the shop. And you can get away with it. But I think for certain products in terms of like drama and documentaries, you still need someone to physically look at the material and select it, because a lot of it's about human emotions. Like a computer can't read human emotions, so they can't actually edit like, oh, this is when they're crying, this is. I don't think that's going to happen. But for simple edits, that could happen in terms of like little promos and that. I think it could take over, whereas you just chuck a load of rushes at it and it put something together. So in terms of that could be the case. But I think in terms of drama, in terms of actual feature films, and in terms of documentaries, I still think you're still going to need physical human beings at the moment, sort of thing. And I don't think that's going to change for hopefully not within my lifetime anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So what's so your plan there is to keep focusing on the higher end things then, I guess, is it, and on the things where which are not just the simple stuff that can be done.
Yeah, because a lot of the times, a lot of courses, they teach you the basics, but they don't always teach you what editors do day in, day out. And the great thing is I'm on the board of the British Film Editors, so I'm talking to people that are working at the high end, and they're really passionate about training as well. So we might even be developing stuff with them in the future. Who knows? But it's good because I'm talking to people within the industry who work on things like MasterChef, who work on like The Apprentice, and they're giving me feedback of what needs to be trained in the future, because they're getting new trainees, but they're not always got the right skills. So what's great I'm able to do is tap into these people who I used to work with 20 odd years ago, who are now like senior people in editing, and I can find out from them what their needs are. So that's really good. So yeah.
Brilliant. No, really good. So just a couple of questions just to sort of kind of bring us home. So just going back to the social enterprise, what advice would you give to somebody that's thinking about setting up a social enterprise?
I would say look into the legal structure before you do it, because that's what I didn't really do. I kind of jumped into it a little bit, and I wish now I'd looked at the fact that I couldn't set up my company. I had to set it up as a company with guarantee. I didn't realize that sort of thing, and I kind of wish now I got a little bit more help about that. And also what I do suggest to do is speak to people that have already done it, because that's the best way of finding out. Because I found out when I spoke to them, I wasn't the only one that just didn't set up the right legal structure. So I wasn't the only one. So a lot of the times you learn through people's mistakes, and obviously you don't want to make too many mistakes because it costs a lot of money. But speak to people that actually specialize in setting up social enterprise like Unlimited and that, because they're the people that have got the right resources and will help you and put you in contact with people that have already done it. So yeah. Brilliant.
No, great advice. If you were to go back to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
I don't know. I think I've done all right. But the fact that I don't always, if I know something in my head, I don't always listen to other people. If I'll give you an example. I applied for the Scottish Edge Awards, and I've applied for a few years, and I've just given up now because it's not worth my while now. But a lot of the times, the woman was from a bank, and what she was doing was looking at my money projections. What she wasn't really looking at is what I was actually doing in terms of who I was helping, who I was actually trying to get work. And I said to her, I know my industry, I've been in it for 25 years. I know my industry inside out. So I know this will work. And she's like, no, it'll never work. You'll never make money. And I was like, I will make money, and I'll prove it, sort of thing. And I feel like going 3-4 years back and saying, well, actually I did all right, sort of thing. And because she was, if I listened to her, I wouldn't have even started it. But the good thing is if I know I think I'm going to do something, I'll just do it. And then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at least I've had a go. Because what I didn't want to do is didn't want to get to hopefully 70 or 80 and just think, oh, I wish I'd tried that, or I wish I'd done it. Because there's too many people in life that do that, that go, oh, I wish I'd done that. And then it's too late then. So you might as well have a go. If it doesn't work, move on to the next project. If it does work, keep going, sort of thing. But try and get as many people that have done similar things to you as advice. I was quite lucky. The guy that set up Mama Youth in London, Bob, bizarrely enough, I actually was an editor with him at Sky years ago. So I actually knew him. So he set up similar to what I was doing. And he was very good in terms of giving me advice, people to approach. So a lot of the times it's good if you can speak to someone that's done something quite similar, because they can then put you in contact with other people.
Brilliant. Great stuff. Obviously, you're using specific software with the editing side and where you're training. But what about more general apps and things that you use to run your business? Anything that that you recommend? Sort of things you got on your phone,
Well,
maybe?
For me, I'm not very good at accounting, but I've got an accountant. But one thing that has saved my life, I think, is I do use an app or a thing called Zero, which is great because what it does, it allows me to see what's coming in, what's going out. It's also great because I can do invoices for it, and as invoices are paid, it tells me. So that for me is really good. And the great thing is, it's quite an easy job for the accountant because you can just export like a spreadsheet, and they can just check the figures are okay. So for me, that was really good. And I find the online banking apps are great now because I can't remember the last time I actually went into a bank sort of thing, because I do all my banking online now sort of thing. And it just shows, because a lot of banks are unfortunately closing down because a lot of what you can do online sort of thing. So I think that's another change in industry as well.
Excellent. Are there any what resources have you found useful? I don't know, books or podcasts, anything in particular that you've would recommend that you found useful?
There's a lot of resources online. I think the good thing is that there's a lot of business resources, a lot of resources for people that want to start up their own business. But the only problem I've found is that some of these are targeted not for social enterprises. Yeah. So sometimes you can't always find exactly what you want. So that's why, for me, I had to approach companies that actually deal with social enterprises, because I found people like, I know I shouldn't really say it, but Business Gateway was useless for me because they just didn't really understand what I wanted to do. And they just kept saying, oh, it's a non-for-profit. I said, no, it's not a non-for-profit. I said, I take my salary and then I reinvest back into the academy. And they just did not understand my business model at all, sort of thing. Yeah. And it's quite hard when you got people that just don't really see what you're trying to do, sort of thing. So I always say, try and speak to as many people, look at as many resources as possible, and don't, I'm the worst for it, but try not to procrastinate too much, because if you don't, someone else is going to do that business. Yeah. If I'd waited another few months, someone else would have done what I've done, and they would have succeeded at it. And I'm just so glad that I took that risk of moving my academy online, and it paid off for me, sort of thing, because I could have just sat around and thought, I'll wait till COVID's over. But time I'd done that, I would have missed the market. It would have been too late, sort of thing. So I think one of the major things I've learned is timing. That getting your business at the right time when people need it is the most important thing. So when people are like saying, oh, I really want training on so-and-so, and you can provide that training, you can do it at a fairly good cost, you're going to get repeat work, because that's what I've found. A lot of my business is repeat work, whereas people have said, oh, Nigel can do it, and they do it. And now even editors, which is amazing, are recommending me, which is a really nice sort of thing. So, and
is that the main...
That's not just in the UK, that's in the States as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And is that the main way that you get new clients, new business, is from recommendations?
A lot of it is through recommendations, but we also try and pitch for work as well. But the trouble is with a lot of funding is they're all individual. So you just can't copy and paste, because every funding bid is separate. So you have to spend a lot of time, and then half the time you don't get them. So that's a lot of time. Not wasted, but a lot of time you've made on a funding bid where you might not get it. Whereas I know that if I work with certain companies, I'm going to get the work and I'm going to get rid of the repeat work. So that works for me. So
yeah, brilliant. And who's had the most influence on you? Is there an individual that's...
there was a guy, and I forgot his surname, which is really bad, but a guy called Gavin, and I met him at an actual conference one day. And he set up his company because he was a guide dog trainer, and he's developed an app for people with who are blind. And I explained my company idea, and he was really, really helpful and really passionate. And he even gave me time to go over to Edinburgh and talk to him, and he didn't even have to do that, but he gave me time, and he actually helped me because I was doing a pitch, and he helped me with all that. And it's amazing that some people, especially in business, will give you that time if they can see that you've got something there. They often help you, and even today he still writes things on my LinkedIn to say, "Oh, well done for sticking at it," because there's so many times when you think, "Oh, is it worth it?" sort of thing, and then you just think, "Well, I've got this far so far. I might as well give it a few months and see how it goes," sort of thing. So, but the only other thing I do find, it's a bit of a lonely business when you're doing it on yourself. It's can be quite hard, but. You got to have a life work balance, I think, because that's something I got wrong for many years. I used to do too much work and not really enough time for my partner and that, which I learned the wrong way. But yeah, try and get a nice balance.
Very good, really good advice. Lots of great stuff. I've really enjoyed talking with you, Nigel. What if people would like to get hold of you or find out more about Ability Academy? What's the best way for them to do that?
Well, either on my LinkedIn, which is just Nigel G Honey on LinkedIn, or abilityacademy.co.uk is my website. So yeah,
brilliant. And is there anything else that you think I should have asked you?
No, I think you've covered everything, really. I think it's great, and like I say, if you've got a really good business idea, don't hold on to it for years. Do it. Just have a go. Do like a lot of the times, it's good just to do like a little trial or just do a small thing just to see what it's like, and then get feedback from that trial sort of thing. A lot of people, what they do is they're too frightened to take that first step, and then they miss the boat. So it's always good just to try it out and then get some feedback and then move from there. So,
brilliant. So Nigel, thank you very much indeed for being my guest on ScaleUp Radio today.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.